I never thought I would be the person who had to humiliate my own mother in front of the entire family just to get a moment of peace. But here we are. It's Christmas Day. The fire is roaring. The smell of pine and roasted turkey is in the air. And instead of feeling the holiday spirit, I'm sitting there while my mother holds up a photo of my sister's new house like it's a holy relic. She looked me dead in the eye, with that sharp, condescending smile she's perfected over 30 years, and said, "Your sister just bought a 4-bedroom in the suburbs, honey. When are you finally going to grow up and settle down, or are you planning on living in that cramped little rental forever?" The room went silent. My sister looked smug, and my dad just stared at his eggnog. That was the moment I realized that being the quiet, humble one was over. I had a secret that was about to blow the roof off that house, and honestly, I don't feel bad about it at all. But I need to know, was I wrong for waiting until the absolute last second to reveal the truth, or would you have let her keep digging that hole? Tell me if you would have handled this differently, because by the time dessert was served, the family dynamic was changed forever. To understand how we got to that dining room table, you have to understand the dynamic between me, my sister Sarah, and my mother, Diane. Growing up, Sarah was always the golden child. She was the cheerleader, the social butterfly, the one who married a stable guy with a corporate job straight out of college. I, on the other hand, was always the creative one, the risky one. I started my own software consulting business 5 years ago, but to my mother, if you don't wear a suit and commute to an office, you don't actually have a job. Every single holiday for the last decade has been a comparison marathon. If Sarah got a promotion, I was asked why I wasn't looking for real work. When Sarah bought a mid-sized SUV, I was lectured on my unreliable older car. My mother has this very specific vision of success. It involves a mortgage, a lawn to mow, and a physical proximity to her. Because I moved 2 states away to a city I love, she treated it like I was a runaway teenager rather than a 32-year-old woman running a successful company. This past year, the pressure reached a boiling point. Sarah and her husband, Mark, supposedly bought this massive house. For 6 months, all I heard on our weekly Sunday calls was about the granite countertops, the crown molding, and the real neighborhood Sarah was moving into. My mom would sigh into the phone and say things like, "It's just so nice to see one of my daughters finally building a legacy, you know? It's a shame you're still throwing money away on rent." I never corrected her. I never told her that my cramped rental was actually a high-end loft in the heart of the city that I'd already moved out of months ago. I didn't tell her that while Sarah was taking out a massive mortgage they could barely afford, I had been quietly working my tail off, scaling my business, and making some very smart investments. I decided to keep my mouth shut because I wanted one thing, a peaceful Christmas. I thought if I just let her have her moment, she'd eventually tire herself out. I was wrong. When I arrived at my parents' house for the holidays, the atmosphere was already thick with superiority. Sarah was showing off fabric swatches for her new living room curtains before she had even taken off her coat. My mom was practically vibrating with pride. The entire Christmas Eve dinner was spent talking about the square footage of Sarah's basement. I just sat there, eating my mashed potatoes and nodding. I had a folder in my laptop bag in the guest room, but I kept telling myself to leave it there. I didn't need their validation. But then came Christmas Day lunch. My mom had invited the extended family, aunts, uncles, and cousins I hadn't seen in a year. She waited until everyone had a glass of wine in their hand to start the public interrogation. She started by announcing Sarah's huge achievement, and then turned her gaze toward me like a predator spotting a slow-moving target. She did the whole poor you routine, sighing about how expensive life is for young people who don't have their lives together. She told the whole table that she was worried I'd never be able to retire because I was so focused on my little hobby business, instead of getting a real foundation. Sarah chimed in, saying she could talk to Mark's boss about a junior entry-level position for me so I could finally get some benefits. The condescension was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. I felt the heat rising in my chest. I looked around at my relatives, who were looking at me with this mixture of pity and second-hand embarrassment. My mom leaned in and whispered, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "Don't be jealous of your sister, dear. Some people just hit their milestones earlier than others. Maybe next year you can afford a nice condo if you stop spending so much on travel." That was it. That was the break. I put my fork down, took a slow sip of water, and looked at her. I realized that she didn't actually care about my success. She cared about her ability to feel superior through Sarah. So, I decided to give her exactly what she asked for. I decided to show her exactly how settled down I really was. But before I tell you what was in that folder and how their faces looked when they saw it, I want you to stop right now. Think about every time someone has underestimated you or talked down to your accomplishments just because they didn't look the way they expected them to. Think about the smug look on my sister's face and the pity in my mom's eyes. If you were sitting where I was, having been poked and prodded for 3 days straight while holding a secret that would shut everyone up, would you have kept your mouth shut to keep the peace? Or would you have laid it all out on the table? Drop a comment right now and tell me, am I the villain for ruining Christmas dinner, or did she earn this? I really want to know if I'm the only one who thinks that family doesn't give you a license to be a bully. Anyway, I stood up from the table without saying a word. The whole room went silent. My mom rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, don't be dramatic and run off crying just because we're being honest with you." I didn't say anything. I went to the guest room, grabbed the heavy manila envelope from my bag, and walked back into the dining room. I didn't sit down. I walked straight over to my mother and placed the envelope in front of her. She looked at it like it might bite her. "What is this?" she asked, her voice hitching a bit. I told her to open it. Sarah was leaning in, looking curious and a bit annoyed that the attention had shifted. My mom opened the flap and pulled out the documents. On top were the closing papers and the deed to a property. But it wasn't just any property. I had spent the last 2 years saving every penny from my hobby business to buy a historic estate on the coast, a house that, quite frankly, made Sarah's suburban 4-bedroom look like a tool shed. My mom's eyes started scanning the lines, and I watched the color drain out of her face. She saw the purchase price, which I had paid in full, no mortgage, no debt. She saw the location. She saw the photos of the sprawling garden and the private beach access. The silence in the room was deafening now. My uncle asked what was going on, and I just said, "I took Mom's advice. I decided to settle down. I actually closed on this place 3 months ago. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it because I thought the holidays were about family, not comparing bank accounts, but since Mom was so concerned about my cramped rental, I figured I should ease her mind." Sarah snatched the papers out of my mom's hand, her face turning a deep shade of red. She looked at the price, then at me, then back at the papers. "This has to be a joke," she stammered. "How could you afford this? Mark and I have been saving for 6 years for our down payment." I just shrugged and said, "I guess my little hobby business did better than you thought. It turns out that when you work for yourself, you don't have to wait for a boss to give you a raise." My mother couldn't even look at me. She went from being the loudest person in the room to being unable to find a single word. The rest of the dinner was incredibly awkward, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one feeling the pressure. My aunts and uncles started asking me questions about my business, genuinely impressed, while Sarah stayed silent and my mom tried to pivot the conversation back to the weather. The aftermath was even more telling. After the guests left, my mom tried to pull me aside and tell me I was unnecessarily cruel for showing her up like that in front of everyone. I told her that she had spent the last decade showing me up, or at least trying to, and that if she was embarrassed, it was only because her own words had come back to haunt her. I told her I was tired of being the family's punching bag just because I didn't follow the path she'd laid out for Sarah. We haven't spoken much since I left that night. Sarah sent me a long, angry text about stealing her thunder, but I just blocked her. I'm currently sitting on the porch of my new home, looking at the ocean, and I've never felt more settled in my life. I realize that some people will only respect you when they see your value in numbers, and those aren't the people you need to impress anyway. I learned that silence is a power, but knowing when to break it is a skill. My mother wanted me to grow up, and I did. I grew right out of the need for her approval. If you think I did the right thing by finally standing up for myself and showing them the reality of my success, please like this video. It's hard to deal with family who only sees what they want to see, and your support really means a lot. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more stories about people finally getting the respect they deserve, or at least the revenge they've earned. Don't forget to head down to the comments and let me know your thoughts. Did I go too far by doing it in front of the whole family, or was the timing perfect? I'll be reading through your responses, and I can't wait to hear your take on this mess. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you all in the next story.